All right, well, hey, everybody, welcome to our episode 6 of Beyond the Sermon. Come on, can we give it up? One day we'll have that button where I can just hit and it'll be like a crowd applause. Well, yeah, we are jumping into our 6th episode, and we recently started a new series called the Legacy series, and we're going to get right into that, but I just wanted to just put that little tease there before I continue.
Well,
let's do an intro. How are y'all doing? How are y'all doing?
You've learned, my friend.
I have learned. I've learned.
Yes,
Elijah needs to be drawn out a little bit.
I want to know people care about me.
Let's change it up. Dan, how are you doing?
Wow,
I'm doing great.
Wow.
Wait your turn. Wait your turn.
I'm gonna know my place.
Dan,
that's why you guys got coffee and I got water.
The first shall be last. You know. Just that's Jesus. I'm doing good, man. Me and my wife put an offer on a house.
Yeah, let's go.
I mean, we might not get it, but just praying. So by the time you listen to this episode, we could be like really dejected or really elated. So.
Yeah.
So we'll know this Sunday when you see him in the church. If he's skipping, you be like, congratulations. If he's like moping around, like.
Yeah. So please, this is a plug. Come to church. We've got a 9 a.m., 11 a.m. Just to see if Dan got the house or not.
Come on.
That's the teaser. Like, what will he be like?
What will he be like? Yes.
I love it.
Well, that's awesome, man. Is it far from here?
It's really far.
Right,
so
South Carolina.
We talked about that earlier.
Back in Texas.
As far away as I could get.
Yes.
Yikes.
No, it's probably like 15 minutes from here, 12 minutes, something like that.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. That's really cool. I really, I pray that happens. And hey, if you're watching, just shoot a prayer for Dan and their family. I know that you guys have been renting for a while. You had recently moved into the area, and although renting can be cool for a while, it's so cool to get to dig some space. Right, get your own space, dig some roots, and all that stuff. So, Bishop.
Oh. So I said, can we talk
about that? Yeah. So this Sunday, let's talk about that.
I said on the stage, jokingly, Andrew Robinson, who's one of our elders at the church, and he serves as the CEO of Mosaic. And I was just joking. He was coming to preach. Me and him joke like this all the time. And Joel actually jokes like this with me too. So we have the whole like, Bishop, like
just the honor, man.
Just
we
the honor, you know what I mean? Also playing around.
Yeah.
Somebody was like, "Oh my gosh, was the bishop in the house?
Was he really? Is he really
that kind
bishop?
of church?"
No, man.
So that was funny. And then somebody like Sam, I think Sam Felton was like, "No, he was just playing." So
maybe we should have a bishop.
I know.
Maybe that's a point of conversation.
I appoint myself Pope and Bishop.
Wow.
Pope actually, the Pope technically is a bishop.
Bishop of Rome.
He's just a first among equals. Come on, church history.
Wow. Yes.
I wish like that little rainbow, the more you know, like from Reading Rainbow. The more you know. You know what I'm saying?
We'll edit that in somehow.
Our budget is increasing. So,
awesome,
okay. So what's going on with me? Man, I have a dog now. And
you're a dog person.
Like metaphorically or
I want to say
literally?
I'm a dog person. I would say my family.
My family comes first.
I am learning that this is how the Lord is sanctifying me. I did not realize. I knew I wasn't too much of a pet animal person. My best friend today, literally, I was in the parking lot, like having, I don't want to say it was a panic attack, but I was like,
what have I done?
What have I done? And he's walking me off the ledge. And I'm just like, man, dude, I didn't realize like how much I was not a pet person. Like we have these moments where his name is Woofer. Our son named him. He's a Bernedoodle. He's a cute little guy. But like I'm playing with him and it's just me and him because the family's gone. And I'm just like, I feel nothing. I'm dead inside. Like what's happening right now? Like I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be enjoying it. And I'm just like, Oh, okay.
Tolerating it. Just tolerating. Wow.
How about you, Joel? Let's like, we don't need to make this a psychological, say, fest on me. How are you doing?
I'm great.
You just came back from Virginia?
I did.
Yeah.
I was in Virginia. Before that, I was in Florida. So I've had.
Are you ever here?
You know what? I'm just here for these episodes.
Comment in the comment section. Does Joel still work here?
Have you ever seen him
anymore?
The Black Denali is actually waiting for me outside. Black Denali. As soon as I'm done with this episode, I gotta fly out. First class. I first class. I did fly first class once. I don't want people to judge me, but you just gotta have the experience at least once.
Preachers and sneakers.
It was an eye-opening experience. I found myself like looking down at people. I didn't like it.
Yeah, as you should.
No.
It's the privilege of that class.
Do we even need to board economy class? I mean,
do their lives matter? I mean, we're all here.
What are we doing?
Right. What are we doing? Can we take? Can we take off?
Like, come on.
Yeah. So, no. Yeah, just got back from Virginia. My younger brother had gotten engaged. I was there to celebrate him and his fiance, so that was cool. And then got back in time. Landed probably a little too late on a Saturday, just in time for church. And we had a great service yesterday.
Yeah, great service.
Great attendance. Lots of people just engaging with the worship and the message. And Pastor Andrew preached great.
Pastor Andrew preached a great message. And, dude, I would just say this. Service to me always feels amazing when people are engaged in worship.
Yeah.
And everybody was so engaged with worship. I remember thinking, wow, like I was like standing there and singing. I was like, oh my God, I wish I was preaching today.
Yeah.
Because like for a preacher, like
that charges you up. Yeah.
You're at third base.
Yeah.
Like you just need somebody to bunt you home. Like you don't need a home. You don't need a, like you just like you're there. Right. And so like for me, like I was just like, it was such a great atmosphere. We also had 2 dedications, which was dope.
We did 2 baby dedications, which is incredible.
Oh yeah, and Roger's
come on, let's share about
testimony.
That. Yes,
man.
God is just continuing to move, just in the Christian body, but also just continues to move in our church context and in our community. We have a member, Roger, that had recently. Had some issues going on with his body and got checked up, and they found like a cancerous cell or cancerous polyp. So after some checkups and some just some visits, they checked the first time, still cancerous. The second time came back negative, no cancer, healed.
Yeah, awesome.
Man, so we're thankful. I know that there was a ton of people that were praying for him.
Yeah.
I know we took time to go visit him in the hospital, pray over him, and just you could just tell he was just at peace with really whatever the final word was going to be. But even throughout that, he's like, I just know God's in control, whatever happens. And I love that the outcome is cancer free and, he can live and walk in just healed.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited for Roger's story, and God's doing some really cool things there. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get choked out.
Liberty.
I'm not at liberty. I don't want to get choked out by my wife.
Yep.
But
God is
good
blessing. Days
for my guy Roger.
Good days. Amazing.
Yeah, man. So we didn't get a chance to podcast the last couple of weeks. Those of you who faithfully follow along with us, and so we're gonna try and do 2 of the teachings in one. And so we started a series called Legacy. I think you introed us well, and so the first one that we did in the series, we just talked about time, right? And like how hard that can be. Just like as I was writing, I was just thinking around this idea that like, man, like money, we can gain it, we can lose it, like, like it can come around. You just kind of have to put your head to the grindstone and figure stuff around that. But time, once it's gone, you can't replenish it.
You get it back.
Yeah.
And man, what do you guys? How do you guys think that like we teach people in the church how to steward time? Or maybe let me bring that back. How do you guys steward time or think about time as something that God has given you to steward? That's a better question. Yes.
That's a great question.
What a great question.
I don't know. Well, I do know. Personally, I feel like I steward time. I don't steward time that well, and what I mean by that, I don't mean it to like, make this sound all negative, but I'm somebody, the way I'm wired, I'm like, I want to take advantage of every second, every minute, every hour, and in turn, what I tend to do is I tend to take on a lot of things, and I tend to have a pretty full schedule, and I tend to get tired. So in a way, I'm like, I'm trying to squeeze as much time out of the day as possible. So I feel like that's the rhythm that I tend to be on. And I don't know that it's the best sometimes. I feel like I get tired faster, but yeah, I don't know if that's even answering.
No, I think question, it is. But yeah. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I think for me and my wife Sarah, I think the past few years, something that has really been fruitful for us is like having a plan around time.
Yeah.
Because like with money, you hopefully like you have a plan around that. You've got a budget, what your consistent bills are, what's coming in, what's coming out, how much do I need to save if I want to get this or get that. And with time, sometimes we just don't plan at all. We're just busy. We're just running here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's when like so much stuff can kind of slip through the cracks. Like if you don't have a budget, you're going to spend money and things are going to slip through the cracks. So we have tried to like plot out without being like overly rigid. How do we want to spend our time? What are our priorities? What has God called us to? And are we creating space for those things that God has called us to do?
Yeah.
So even something like your time with the Lord, like if we don't like schedule that out, then more than likely it's going to slip through the cracks along with some other things that are really valuable.
I think that's one of the most like interesting things. I don't know if you've thought about this yet, because you're I think Taylor said it during staff meeting, or was it the retreat? They're like, I'm looking forward to our 1 year anniversary. Yeah. That it's already been a year since you guys have been married, right? Yeah. Like, is that like, or it's coming up on a year, right?
Yeah. We so Taylor's my wife. She gets to be on staff with us as well, and it's already been 7 months. We're coming up on 8 months, which is wild. Like it feels like we just came back from our honeymoon. Like we just moved in, we just got settled. So it's so true how quick time passes and you don't get it back.
Yeah.
Like all we have are pictures and videos to remember some of those moments and some memories, but 10 years down the road, we'll probably remember half of it, and we'll have to look back at photos and videos to kind of relive and remember. So it is wild. Yes.
And then, I think about like even my kids, like my son turns 4 in April. My daughter is 2. And even just looking at pictures over a year ago when we first came, and I'm just like, she was a little baby. And now she's
walking and giving orders.
And she's the boss.
She's the boss for real.
She was this dog is all, she tried to boss him around. No, woofer. No. Woof, woof, woof. No, she calls him woof, woof. It's just like, oh my gosh, you go, little mama, And so like I just think about like these things and the weight of sometimes acknowledging like, hey guys, like, hey, we're almost a quarter through 2023. Isn't that insane? Like, and it feels like, I think the older we get, the faster I think time seems to move.
Yeah.
Right. And just kind of bring it back to the sermon. I think that was when I was working through the idea, right, of like, how do we steward, how do we manage? I think I used the word manage and not owners, right? We're not owners, we're managers. And I stole that from Tony Evans. How do we manage what God has given us in time? And immediately that idea of Abraham like came up. And it was the thought process of the writers of Scripture continue to shoot up this flag of how old he is, right? And that was like the immediate thought that came in my mind. Like, he's 75 when he starts, right? His wife is 10 years younger than him. And like, and then, as you dig into this passage, like God has told him, take everything, take your family, get up and go. And like, in our context, we're just like, okay, yeah, we're moving by faith. Okay, whatever. But like, it was like, no, divest all of the time that you've invested into your situation, and not just leave your dad, whose name was Tara, but like, or Tara, but like, the responsibility of the family members that you now live with, right? Like, and their servants and all those things. Like, just say goodbye to that, and go to this place where you have no idea. I'm going to make you a great nation. And he's like, oh wait, my wife is barren, like she can't have children. Right. And just like that feeling. And so I guess like I want us to talk about for a second is like, and what do you do when you plant, you've planted seed and you've spent time, and then God tells you to go? Have you guys ever been there and you're just like, well, wait a second, like I'm supposed to be reaping a harvest, like I've been faithful, right? Like, yeah. Well, how do you, I feel like I didn't get to flesh that out as much as I wanted to.
I thought that was the part of the sermon that stood out to me the most, because I realized like it's such an obvious part, but I'd never thought of it in that way before. That like you always hear like the faith that it took for him to follow this God that he didn't really know and hear this calling, but you don't really think about, he invested 75 years, his family, his career, his 401k or whatever, like everything was invested in this city and this culture, and to be able to like leave all that is pretty nuts.
Yeah. I feel the weight of that. I think like even when we left Buffalo, right? Because like it hurts. I can't even go back and look at like the website stuff or old sermons or stuff like that, because like I feel like the weight of like, I planted this church. It was my baby. I shared it. We raised money. We saw people get saved. We baptized people. And then feeling like the Lord was leading us here, right? Feeling that our season was done. Like I lamented that. And honestly, like I would actually be honest with you, I don't know if I actually did lament it. I think I'm probably speaking too quickly. I don't know if I've taken the time to actually weep at a dream deferred, right? Like because church planning is hard.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't know if I ever took time, and maybe my burnout season, which took me a year of like just great Christian therapy, was like me maybe lamenting and maybe working myself past that. And then coming to grips by saying it is okay, which I guess I would say that because that was a lot of our conversation with my therapist, was just him saying like, hey, it's okay to let go. And I think, like what you're saying, I think the crux of that, like some of these faith moments, is also saying it's okay to move like from this place where I feel like God has been like investing in me,
Yeah, I think just to give another, maybe just like another point of view, what comes to mind, because we've all clearly been in seasons where we felt like the Lord said, "Hey, this is done. You've planted and you've done all the thing I need you to move," and you tend to look back like, man, like either man, I saw so much fruit, and like, will I see more fruit or in the next season, or like, man, I didn't get to see the fruit of my labor.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I keep thinking of almost like an analogy, but I keep thinking of like a farmer who learns how to farm and learns to till the soil, learns to plant seeds, and learns to water that seed, and then all of a sudden has to leave to farm somewhere else. You still learn so much, and you're now able to carry over to the next season a lot of the stuff that you learn, and I feel like you can do it that much better in the next season. And really what I'm trying to say is, I remember when I moved away from Florida, feeling like almost like a little bit like defeated, like, man, I poured so much time into this place and it did not give me back like a lot, like what I put in. And I was like, man, I left. But now looking back, almost 7 years later. So I was actually just in Florida before Virginia, playing drums at a camp at that church for their youth ministry, and I got to see some kids that were in our student band leading, and students like now off to college, grown up, but still in the faith, still wanting to be youth leaders and all this stuff. And I look back like, man, like there was still fruit like that happened, even though I did not get to see it. Now I get to see it, but also having moved away into a new season, I feel like my fruit just grew even more. Yeah. Because I learned so much from this past season, right? Wow. I learned how to farm. I learned how to till the soil. I learned how to encourage people. I learned how to pour into people, and moving into that, I was like, man, I learned like what not to do and what to do that happens really well. And I would say that this season has been the most fruitful season because of those seasons that like I was just like good. In there in the desert, just like grinding it out. Yeah. So I feel like that's what comes to mind. That's what comes to mind. Just like wanted to give a different point of view.
No, that makes me think of, when Jesus gives that parable about the seed. He says, unless the seed falls to earth and dies, it can't bear fruit. But if it dies, it can bear 100-fold what was planted. And it makes me think of that in connection with like the things that we've committed and invested time to when they die, or when God asks us to lay them down like that, just knowing that He's faithful to make that fruitful, and that when you step into the next thing, it'll be faster, more effective, more efficient, more fruit than if you had just held on with that white knuckle death grip to this thing that He's asking you to let go of.
Oh my goodness. Exactly. That's so, man. Okay. So I love this, right? Because like 75 years of Abraham's life was not wasted. Right. It was preparing him for the however many more years that he was going to live. And I think that's the part that we have to understand when God is calling us out in step of faith, is to now live out, right, that dream, that thing that He's planted in us, right, and He has been cultivating in us, right? It was at that moment that Abraham was now ready for, that promotion. And sometimes we look at it as a demotion or a step back because it doesn't feel like everything's put together, right? Like Abraham's looking at the reality, like his wife is infertile. I've never been here. I'm going somewhere with, that I've never been to, and I don't know these people, and like, am I going to be accepted? Are they going to come and like, try to kill my family or whatever? And he just believed in this God who he, just has this encounter with, right? And he goes, but like even through that journey, one of the things that were just popping up was like, again, that age thing is that I think that the human aspect of like, even when we do have faith, we do try to speed up the clock, right? Yep. And in that moment, Abram, at the time, he wasn't Abraham yet, Abram goes ahead and he and Sarai, they jump the gun and he's like, let me help God with this by having this child through Hagar, right? And we also see the legacy of that, right? Like,
remind us how Abram responded when Sarai.
Oh, he was like, Sarai was like, hey, Abram, like, listen, like, obviously we can't have kids, but like, you could sleep with like my maid servant.
Babe, no.
Stop. Honey.
Are you sure?
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Are you sure?
Oh,
that's horrible.
It's like every man, like, what is like, he's like, okay, I guess I'll do it for you and the Lord, and so, and he does this, but like, what's so crazy about this text, and like a lot of people don't, I've read a lot of articles around this, and there's been a lot of scholarly articles, but one of them talks about like, not only was this not a godly thing in their decision to try to help God, but like possibly like, Abraham is like, this is not Hagar's will. Like, what I'm saying? Like, they're forcing this upon her, and because she is a slave, she's taking it. But technically, that's rape, right? That's taking place there. And then, as she tries to grab a sense of like identity and like, and worth from this situation, because now she seems to be have been elevated above like the status of a servant a little bit, right? Like her Sarai gets jealous and upset, and the Bible says that like, she treats her badly, right? Like this is a woman that is like that is, man, not been treated well. She has to literally run away. Like imagine what's happening to you to like run away to the point where you and your child could almost die in the middle of the wilderness. Like that's like heinous things. And I know we don't like to think about that. And I think it goes to that bigger idea of like when we choose to take our like, what God is doing and take hold of time the way that we decide and become owners and not just managers of what God is doing, like the ramifications don't just land with us, but it lands with others in deep ways, to this point, to this day in the Middle East, where you have these two factions which are fighting, right? The seed of Isaac and the seed of Ishmael, which are still going at it, right? But like you could see it, like the ripple effects of sin, yeah. We got to keep going. I wish we had a lot of time, where we could spend on this. I love that. So at the end, we talked about how he finally gets it, right? He has this moment where his Isaac is supposed to be sacrificed, and he has that line, which made me, again, when I was thinking about it through the lenses of time, it made me rethink that passage, that he was just like, oh, I don't have the pressure of this anymore. The pressure's on God, right? Yeah. Like, saying, so like he finally detached. The God who got me and my wife at 100 and she's 90, like this thing which would never happen, like, and I see how like whenever I try to like make things happen, like how badly that turned about. But like now he's saying like, go sacrifice. I'm good with that. Right. And like I think that was the cool thing that you see Abraham learning and going back to his first impulse that we find him in the scriptures, where he's just like, yeah, let's go. What did you guys think about that? Like when he was just like, okay, I am now 100. I think he would have been about probably, scholars say maybe about 115, something like that, years old. Yeah. And now he has to sacrifice the thing. Like, what do you guys think about? I got it. Now God is like, yeah, Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of inconceivable, at one level. Like there's got to be a divine thing kind of happening, but obviously this history that he's built with God. So you say he was 75 about when God called him out. So then 25 years, 15 more years. It was that 40 years, which even that number, I haven't thought of that till now. That's crazy. It's like crazy 40 number. Years in the wilderness. And then he's finally ready to enter the promised land. But here's this last thing.
You're preaching now, Dan.
Yeah. I mean, I do it. But yeah, I think he had to invest those 40 years before he could get to that point where he trusts God at that level, where he's the friend of God, he's the man of faith. Yeah. And if he didn't go through that slow, patient grind of 40 years with God, learning each lesson, then he wouldn't have been ready to like have that level of surrender, of faith, of acceptance. So just
so good.
Some encouragement to us.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like we get so discouraged when we're spending so much time and so much effort, and feel like, man, we're losing on time. But I just want to encourage somebody. I'm trying to put it in like a condense it. Sometimes the time that you invest will yield or will basically show the treasure that you receive. And a lot of times, and I see this a lot, just especially like in the younger culture, and I'm 31, so I feel like I still have some of the fast-paced kind of culture where we want that instant gratification and we want to move on to the next. But like I remember when I really even moved into Overflow Church, I had come from like a background of like, 2 years and what's next. 2 years and what's next. And I prayed to God to help me rewire my brain and like through just constantly thinking and just trying, I was like, no, like I'm here until the Lord tells me, and it's been over 2 years, and I've seen so many treasures because of the time that I've invested into here, and I can't say that every year has been easy, but man, it's been so worth it because I've been able to see some really cool treasures because of the time that I've invested into this season. So like whoever might be watching or listening, like you feel like, man, like I need to throw in the towel now or move into somewhere. Like just hold on just a little longer. Just hold on just a little longer. I mean, like homeboy, 40 years, and then he saw a payout, and we're mad because we've waited 4 months or 4 years, right? Right? So
because if you had left in 2 years, you would have never got your greatest treasure. What's your greatest treasure, Joel?
Pastor Elijah. No, my greatest treasure is my wife.
That's what I was trying to go at, right?
I know.
That was a softball.
I know, but I wanted to encourage you. I wanted to encourage you, but no, my greatest. I've been in Michigan for almost 7 years, and in that time, about a year and a half into it, I'm like, I don't know what's happening, and
God brought me
to
the woman that would elevate you,
the land of milk
to
and honey.
That next level.
That's it.
Come on.
And I'm there because of her.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for her. Thankful for this season. Definitely the treasure's there. The time was invested and the treasure's there. And yeah.
So continuing on that idea, I think of like, man, what God can input in you. And I think like, in the talent sermon, one of the things that I wanted to communicate is that God has input a treasure in you. Right?
Yes.
And when we sit on it, we actually do a disservice to the Creator who has elaborately laid out this plan for you. I heard one person say this, or read one person say this. I can't remember if it was Shakespeare or whoever it was, but talked about one of the richest, most fertile places on the planet is the graveyard. It's because it's got dreams that were never met and accomplished. Right, there were stories and people that somebody never wrote. There were songs. There were scientific explorations and innovations and inventions that were never created because people didn't get that realized. And I think, man, it just speaks to this idea that God has created us in His image and He has put a treasure, but for whatever reason, we hold that back because we see people on the stage. And I know you get this a lot, Joel and Dan, because people see, we got the show you gifts, right? They're the ones which are the ones that everybody sees every Sunday. How frustrating is that when you're trying to encourage people that you guys are each talking to and discipling to say like, no, God has placed something in you, right? Like, don't like awaken that thing, right? And you do it, right? It doesn't have to look like me,
right?
Yeah, and I think historically, the church probably didn't have that problem that we kind of have today in our modern church culture.
Oh, I love
whereas
this.
like you had
church
like
history. You're talking my language.
Maybe you had 500 people in the village of the town. You got one small church and one small parson or reverend or something. People still knew that they were called and equipped by God. I don't know how much, but everyone wasn't thinking, well, if only I was the parson, then I could use a gift, like that's the only thing. So I think in some ways the church has shot itself in the foot with some of the ways we've structured it around, kind of the flashing lights and all that stuff. But also just, we've got to keep teaching people, you're image bearers of God. Yeah. Like from the womb, you had something of such great value, and you're talking about like these treasures hidden in the graveyard. And I had a friend years ago who took his own life, unfortunately, and in a period of like grieving and praying and talking with the Lord, that was one of the things that the Lord highlighted. Like, this is the real sorrows that an image bearer of God who is reflecting light to creation, that light was snuffed out. So even if you don't know what your gift, your skill, your talent is, at bare minimum, like, you reflect the light of God. You're the light of the world, the salt of the earth. Like, you have incredible gifts and talents, and you just need to spend some time talking with the Lord, talking with the pastor, a mentor, helping you uncover, like, what is that thing?
Yeah, that's so good, man. Yeah. I think that's my biggest frustration when people come up to me at the church. They're like, well, what is there for me? Like, I like to do this. I'm like, so then do it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, it's like, man, like that thing that God has given you, like that fire. Like, you love business. I'm not a businessman, right? I'm a church guy. Like, you know what I'm saying? I've spent majority of my education at this point now, almost the same amount of time of my early education to now in the church, thinking about these ideas, because that's what my passion is. And I'm utilizing the talents that God has given me to the maximum that I can, right? The two little talents that I got, right? Or the one, whatever, you know what I'm saying? I'm giving it all that I have. But man, like, I meet people, man, that are like in the marketplace and they're crushing it as leaders. Like, man, think about your space as a mission field, right? For the kingdom, right? Think about how God can utilize that space and just like capture people's hearts. One of my favorite music artists right now, his name is Toby Nungwigwe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Like, I love this dude. He's not in like overt Christian artists like, you know, like Lecrae and stuff like that. He's a rapper, but like, this dude is like, man, such a godly man. And again, like, man, it's not that he's like making like Christian music or whatever. He doesn't. He just makes music. But like, he doesn't go anywhere unless he can bring his family. He respects his wife. He doesn't curse in his music, you know. Now, his music is raw, don't get me wrong, like, you know what I'm saying, it's real, but like, he doesn't curse because that's something he's chosen not to do. And I actually think because he's such a good rapper, people don't actually probably don't even know that he doesn't curse. Right. It's just something that he's chosen to do, but I just listen to lyrics a lot. So I love his stuff, but like, I love it. And he's unashamed about his faith. Yeah. Like, he does not care. He's unashamed about his faith. And like, he's authentically who he is. And I think there's something about saying, like, it doesn't have to look like Elijah, Dan, or Joel. It looks uniquely like the gifts and the talents that God has given me. Right. And man, I just love that. Oh, what are your thoughts?
So many.
So many.
So many. My thoughts, I just like listening, man. Just like listening. I'm a great listener.
I have so many thoughts that I just want to listen.
I just don't want to take away from how great of a point you just made, you know.
Well, I'll say this. I think also our structure at the church is actually built for this kind of thing to be awakened. So at the beginning of last year, 2022, I started off my first sermon series here at Overflow. It was called God Dreams. And we were just talking about basically the dreams that God has planted inside of you. And it's his dream for you to see that thing come to flourish. And then we moved into this idea that the next series was Made for More. Right? That we're not made to sit down. And it was really talking about like, we've all been given gifts. We've been created, predestined to do good works, created with gifts that God has given us to do these good works, to live out this creation well, right? So that this picture of heaven and earth would come together by the way that we toil and break the land up, right? And when I say the land, I'm just that all I'm meaning is work, by the way that we work, the things that we do, create artistically, whatever. And so that led us into really launching our group's model, right? That at one part it's very much heavily disciple driven. At the same part, it's people awakening the gifts that God has planted in them, right? So that they can say, hey, like, I love to do it. So I always pick on Noah because like his is the gift which is probably the furthest away from me. he loves to run. I don't. Like you're saying. And so like saying like, man, if God is giving you, God has given us gift. He's seen people, I think, like rededicate their lives back to the Lord. We've seen people coming and be married through his gifting and everything like that. And he's discipling people with his passion. And really our desire as a community, as a church, is to have these micro churches with these passions that God has given them, right? Like I would love to see micro churches of businessmen thinking about how they can change the world for Jesus in the marketplace and in the community with these minds, which are so amazing, right? Or, you know, I want to start a crocheting, you know, ministry, whatever, right? And then like you know, there's a group of people which are making clothes for the homeless. You know what I'm saying? Like these things, they have a way of bubbling out, and we think that they're not, like, these passions are like insignificant and they're not like you're standing up on the stage. But what happens when we come in on Sundays? We look at Sundays as our refilling and our celebration. This is where we celebrate baptisms and what God has been doing. But then we go off into our micro churches, right, as leaders with these passions that are infused in us, thinking about doing things the Jesus way, and developing people up under us who have the same passions, and then launching them. Like I think we have a movement, you know, even bigger than just like here's the spot where we come. Like we become a movement that can literally change the region. And just last thought on that. Now I'll kick it to you guys on this idea. I just think of Acts 17, and as the believers come, and those words have always captured my imagination. They simply say, "Hey, here are the people that have turned the world upside down." You know, they literally changed the economy of a city, and not a small city at that. And that's because like these Christians were serious about the lives that they were living. So anyways, just maybe as we land the plane, how are ways that you guys have utilized the talents that God has given you to turn the world upside down for his glory?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'd turn the world upside down, but
you have, Dan. I promise you have.
I like what you're saying, because it makes me think of like not overthinking it. Mm-hmm. Like just because like you're a rapper, it doesn't mean you have to rap Christian lyrics all the time. Just because you're a business owner, it doesn't mean you have to start a Christian business, or that you have to like evangelize every person who comes into your office or something like that. It's like you are an image bearer. You have, you know, God living inside you. So if you will just go with that intentionality to the things that you're already passionate and gifted and skilled, like he will reveal himself through you. That's what Jesus said. If you'll abide in me, you will produce much fruit. And that's my Father's glory that would happen. Yes. So I think sometimes we just overthink it. Like it's got to be this like super overtly spiritual, you know, Christian thing. It's got to be like a Bible study, or it's got to be evangelism on the street corner. Like if that's what you're gifted and passionate about, then sure, do those things. Yeah. But I like with our group's model, it's just like whatever you're passionate. Someone came up to me this past Sunday who's passionate about photography. He's cool. He's like, hey, I'm thinking of maybe getting a group of people who have that similar passion. And like, so good. Yeah, it's not like, and we'll have a Bible study and evangelize everyone every time we meet, but like God is going to manifest himself just because we're going to gather together with that intentionality. So
yeah, seems like that's what Jesus called the church, where 2 or 3 are gathered. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, anyways, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think a lot of times, actually, I know that a lot of times we underestimate our giftings, and we overlook our giftings. We feel like I feel like a lot of people think that gifting has to do with something that's gonna bring an return on investment, that's gonna make money, that's going to like. But a lot of times, you know, it could be something as simple as like, are you an encourager? Like I love encouraging people. Yes. And I've seen a lot of people like walk into their gifting and like fine tune their gifting just because I said, hey man, like you could do it. You got this. I believe in you. Like simple like that. Maybe you're somebody who just likes cooking for people. That right there is building community. Yeah. That right there is building community. That's There's so many people that will through breaking bread will break down their walls and just open up about certain things and maybe walk in their giftings that way. And I think when we begin to underestimate our giftings, I think we're definitely also underestimating what the Lord can do through us. And we're almost like just slamming the door on what God can do through you. Ooh. So whoever maybe is watching, again, just my gifting of encouraging, I want to encourage you to walk in whatever you feel like you're really good at, whether it's talking to people, whether it's building a business, whether it's helping somebody build a business, whether it's saving, like whether it's being an amazing parent, an amazing stay-at-home mom, an amazing stay-at-home dad, because there's also those as well, like an amazing entrepreneur. Like it does not have to be things that are tied to the church. But I think through you walking in your identity and through your calling, I believe that you are also walking in the ways of the Lord, because he just wants you to walk in what he's placed inside of you.
That's so good, man. Yeah. And let me land it like this. I was thinking about what you said, and I know what you meant. And but when you were saying, well, I don't know if I've turned the world upside down, and I think actually this was kind of the point that I was and I don't think I fleshed it out well in the sermon, was that to the master, right, of that servant, he would have gotten the same celebration and party that the other two had, right? Even though the talent that he was given was less than the other two, right? And so for the one with 5 talents who multiplied it, right, to 5 more, right, we think like, look, that person has turned the world upside down. But to the master, it's equal. And so that's what like he didn't understand. And I think, again, that idea of like, sometimes we don't think like what we're doing will have ripple effects. And that's why I really landed on that idea of like, man, in the West, we're really enamored with the splash, but the ripple effects are what outlast us. That's legacy. Mm-hmm. And when we're just faithful in the little, most great revivals don't start with the guy who is preaching or doing this amazing thing, or a gal who was doing this amazing thing. It usually starts with, when you really start digging into great revivals, it starts with some old lady in the back pew somewhere who was just praying that God would do something in her city. This Asbury revival that just took place, which the world is still feeling the effects of it and spreading all through different campuses. The guy who preached it was actually, he called his wife afterwards and said, like, I feel like I probably preached one of my worst sermons. Yeah. I didn't get to the point, but it's people's faithfulness in the little, that he can always say that I was a part of that thing. At the end of his sermon, he called students to come, if I'm not mistaken, and just pray for one another, or if they want prayer. And he went on thinking what he did was not great, but he was faithful with what God had given him. Yeah. And thousands, right, showed up. And that's what I really want to challenge us in the church to say, like even though it may not seem like what you're doing is amazing, it might just be simply like you show up with your ladies or your fellas and you have like simple Bible study. You don't know the ripple effects that will happen throughout time. God will use that little talent.
It's almost like a stewardship principle. Like, how are you stewarding? Just steward it. Just believe in it.
And I like that marries the talents and the time together. Yes. Like, you have the talent, but are you willing to be faithful over time? To like endure, to be patient, to wait on God to reveal? Because, I mean, even like in Hebrews 11, talking about like Abraham and these other like heroes of faith, it says they didn't see the fruition of what was promised. Abraham didn't get to see the generations and the nations he got to see one son. Yeah. Like all that faithfulness, all that crazy stuff he went through 40 years, and he got one son. Yeah. But God promised him like more, offspring than the stars that he could count in the sky. Yeah. But his faithfulness, so anyway, so that to me, that's encouraging too. Like, I might not see it. It might be in heaven when I see like the fruit, but will I take the time and the talent, and marry them together, be patient with it, and let God do his thing?
That's great.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to land the plane. That's a great
place. How are you stewarding your time and your talents? Man, we hope that this episode has been an encouraging one for you. We hope that you've learned something through this. Leave a
learned
comment.
You something.
Learn me something.
We learned you something.
Hashtag learn Joel something.
Learn me something. Drop a comment down below if something stood out to you, or if you want us to unpack something else. Just drop a comment down below. Let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well. Hit the like button. That would help us out a ton. Yeah. And just even share this podcast episode with somebody that you feel like is in a season right now where they don't know how to steward their time or their talents, or maybe they're just in a place of they don't know where to go next. We feel like really a lot of this will help them at least have some clarity on those next steps. But thank you, Elijah. Thank you, Dan. Till next time.